Hi everybody, this is Megan Garza with Megan Garza Wellness. I'm a nutritional therapy practitioner, health coach, and yoga instructor, and you're listening to the Restoring Balance podcast. More women than ever are now dealing with digestive, hormonal, and skin issues and are not finding satisfactory answers or results. On this show, I teach you how to implement holistic lifestyle, dietary, and mindset strategies to help you get smooth digestion and balanced hormones to reclaim your health, feel confident about your decisions, and to finally live life on your terms. Hello, welcome back. This is episode 15, and the title of today's episode is Why is Everybody So Sick? Before we get into today's episode, if you're a fan of the show, this is just a reminder of how you can support the podcast by giving it a 5-star rating on Spotify Podcasts, which helps the algorithm get my show to other listeners who would benefit from it just like you. Without further ado, let's dive in. So we're going to be talking about the changes that have happened over the past 250 years that has led us to the current health crisis that we are in, also the result of these changes and what it's doing to our bodies. And not only that, but what we can do to make positive changes. So we're going to end on a high note here rather than just focusing on all of the negatives, because there really are a lot of things that we can do to implement positive changes to kind of mitigate some of the problems that we're seeing from the changes that have occurred since the Industrial Revolution. So that leads me into my first point of the biggest change that we've seen is the Industrial Revolution in the 1800s. So this has led to more sedentary jobs, factories being built to create machines, and then these machines have taken jobs of men, which has also led to things like less healthy food, sleep deprivation, and then also a massive population boom that occurred because of this. Then after that, in the 1940s, in the 1950s, after World War II, we had the chemical revolution. So this is when chemicals were introduced into the environment. They were discovered mostly for World War II for different things. And this has increased our exposure to certain chemicals because they're used in fertilizers and just all around us in cosmetics. If you've listened to my podcast or if you follow me in my email list or social media, you will know that I talk about this all the time, all of the chemicals that we are being exposed to and how detrimental they are to our health. And this has also led to more processed foods because it's easier to package things because of the chemicals and preservatives that they have discovered. Then in the 1900s, big food has really taken over. So big food brands like Kellogg's and Nestle later on were created to create cheap and convenient foods. And unfortunately, they do not have many nutrients in them, if nutrients at all. They are just frankenfoods that have been created to hijack our taste buds, so that way we want more and more of these foods, which unfortunately is not in the best interest of our overall health. It's just in the interest of the pocketbooks of these people who have created these foods and these companies who have created them. And big food also has a really big say in policies. They are very political. This whole topic is very political of big food. I'm not going to get into it today because it is not what this episode is focusing on. However, they do have a major say-so in what goes on the food pyramid and also what they deem as healthy, which unfortunately is far from healthy. It's just what makes them the most money. And then the most recent revolution is the digital revolution of the 1970s. So this is when things really started to boom with changes in health, and not in a good way. So this has led to more sedentary lifestyles, more EMF exposure or electromagnetic frequency exposure, poor posture. There's also been a sense of community that has severely declined since then, which we are social creatures and we need community to be able to live happy, healthy, and thriving lives. So now on to the results or byproducts or effects of these revolutions that we've seen. So we've seen a massive increase in things like obesity, heart disease, ADD, mental health problems, things like thyroid issues, infertility, and just overall digestive and hormonal dysfunction. And there's really a lot of reasons for this that I'm going to get into in just a moment. But if you look at the statistics of how much these chronic illnesses and health problems have increased, it is just mind-blowingly sad, because it was not like this in the time of our great-grandmother. And this just goes to show you how quickly things have changed in such a short period of time. Because if you look at how closely they would follow natural lifestyle habits and dietary habits, it is so different from how we are living our lives now. Some of the reasons why we are seeing such an increase in things like obesity and mental health problems, among all the other issues that I mentioned, is due to a long list of things. But let's start with one of the major culprits that I think dietarily speaking, is that a word? Dietary speaking? Anyways, speaking of food, it is vegetable oil. And this is because it has replaced healing and nutritious animal fats like butter, lard, beef tallow, and even plant oils like avocado and olive oil. And the reason why vegetable oils should really be avoided is just because they are highly processed foods. They are typically made with chemical solvents and deodorizers like hexane, and this can lead to a lot of metabolic issues. It can lead to inflammation in the body and so much more. And I'm not saying that polyunsaturated fats are the most evil things in the world, because they are beneficial in small amounts, but not the way that we are eating them, because you have it in almost every single meal in the standard American diet, just completely eliminating or having a very small intake of monounsaturated and saturated fats. And this is a huge problem because our body thrives off of saturated fat, and it does so well with monounsaturated fats. And also the fact that there are fat-soluble vitamins like vitamin A, D, E, and K in animal fats, and you cannot find these anywhere else. They are foundational to your overall health and well-being. And also the fact that monounsaturated and saturated fats are protective to heart health. And we wonder why we have such an epidemic of heart disease and heart attacks. And I mean, it really makes sense when you look at the data of it and not just the science that big food puts out, because there's a lot of junk science out there, unfortunately, because, as I said, it benefits certain people who have their hands in certain pits of money. So that's why you kind of have to be really careful about what studies you're looking at as well. But just overall, the vegetable oils have really created a huge issue in the westernized diet. Then you have less high quality animal foods and more plant foods. So if you followed me for any amount of time, you will know that I am not an advocate for veganism or carnivore or keto or any of these diets for a very long-term period of time, because of the fact that they do not provide the essential nutrients that our body needs. And it just creates a level of restriction that is just not healthy overall. Plus the fact that plant foods are largely undigestible. They do not get broken down by the body like meats and animal products do. However, they are important. That's why I always recommend, if you're going to eat plants, definitely cook them in butter, cook them in some kind of animal fat, and make sure that they are cooked well to make them more digestible. And on top of the fact that we are eating more plants than ever and less animal foods is the fact that we are also turning to cheap and easy microwave foods that are really processed and just hyper palatable, which creates a sense in our brain that this is what our body needs. And unfortunately, it is not what our body needs. It's what our brains are telling us, because they have just been hijacked by these chemicals. Then next on the list, we have the reliance on big pharma. And I'm not saying that modern medicine is a terrible thing, because it has led us to live longer lives in a sense of treating physical trauma and also things like infectious diseases with antibiotics, because antibiotics are a very life-saving medicine that we would not be here today without. So I am not saying that Western medicine is the worst thing in the world. I think that complementary and Western medicine can work very well together. However, we do have to be very careful about the medicine that we are taking, because the fact that it is a predatory system. There are doctors who I'm sure they are in it with all of their heart and they want to help people, but unfortunately, they are just taught to prescribe, diagnose, and prescribe. And there's not really a lot of curing that is going on in that system, unfortunately, which is why we have seen the revenue for Big Pharma increase from $390 billion back in 2001 to a whopping $1.6 trillion in 2023. And that is incredible. That is just absolutely insane to think about how much they are profiting off of people who are sick and desperate and looking for answers, and they are not finding those answers within the system. And this is why I've seen so many people switching over to alternative medicines, because they are looking for practical answers and real solutions that are going to work. Because with the Western medical model, these doctors do not know how to really cure people because it is a broken system. Like I said, they are probably trying to help people. They get into it with the right mindset, but they are limited with what they can do based on the knowledge that they have, because they look at the body as just different parts rather than a holistic mindset of what human bodies are, because it's mind, body, and spirit, and all three of those must be addressed. So instead of curing a patient, they have a lifetime customer. And unfortunately, you see this in so many people who are chronically ill, who are obese, who just have all kinds of metabolic issues. They just keep going back to the doctor over and over for pills because they think that this is the only way that they can live. So rather than getting to the root of the problem, they just continue to do the same thing over and over, not realizing that what they're doing is actually harming themselves. And this is coming from someone who was heavily medicated as a child. I've been there, done that. I've been through the system. I've been through the ringer. I know exactly what it's like to be led down the wrong path, to have doctors tell you all of these things and just completely believe it. Now, there's a difference between, being a child and not really having much of a say-so, and an adult, which I think is even worse in a way, because we have so much information at our fingertips, which is what makes me so sad how people have not woken up from this. But I really feel like the tides are turning and things are changing, which makes me so happy, because we don't need to continue to live like this and to be sick. And also with Big Pharma, we also have the uptick in the amount of vaccinations that we are given from birth to adulthood. And if you look at what your great-grandmother had gotten, or even your grandma or your mom, to what millennials and Gen Z have acquired, it is a staggering increase and uptick in the numbers. And there is such a thing as being over-vaccinated, especially when they're vaccinating children who are currently sick, they have health problems, or they're just not in the right state to have these shots, and they continue to get them no matter what, because they just believe that the doctor knows best. And if you look at the ingredient label and the insert packet for these vaccinations, it's wild, the amount of side effects and adverse reactions that can occur. And there's even a website called VAERS that you can report vaccine adverse reactions, and the amount of people who report their vaccine reactions versus the amount of people who actually have vaccine reactions, I believe that it doesn't actually match up, because people don't really understand what vaccine reactions, so they might just kind of chalk it up to a coincidence, or they think that it's just something that, this is just what happens. And unfortunately, this leads to a lot of underreporting, which is very frightening to think about. And then next on the list for the effects of our modern lifestyle is unfulfilling jobs and long work hours, especially for women, because we are cyclical by nature. Our energy levels fluctuate based on where we are in our cycle and throughout the month. So expecting women to perform at the same level as men is just absolutely bonkers. And it is very ignorant to think that we can do the same thing as men because we are very different than men. It is not a weakness to be different. It is not a weakness to not be able to perform in these high stress jobs because it is not natural for female physiology. And I'm not saying that there aren't some women who can just excel in these corporate jobs, but the general rule of thumb is that it is not how we're designed to work. And unfortunately, these fast-paced lifestyles really just leave us with no time for reflection or relaxation. And also just the fact of being unfulfilled in your work is just absolutely insane because we expect to be able to have a family and to make sure that our husband is happy and just do all of these things plus having a full-time job. And it's just crazy because we're not superwoman. We can't do it all. And I'm not saying like pick one or the other, but in a sense, it kind of is that way because there's just so much burnout that can happen within that lifestyle. And it is sold to us like it is the only way to success in this modern world. Next on the list, we have chemicals. So these are the chemicals that are in our skincare, our food, the water, the air. And this really happened a lot back when fluoride was introduced into tap water, when chlorine was added, which can lead to all kinds of health problems, especially within the thyroid. And you see the way our obesity crisis is, and it's very clear that there's a lot of people who are dealing with thyroid dysfunction, and it's something that is definitely overlooked in terms of what is causing this. And it's like, just stop drinking the tap water. And a lot of people don't realize how harmful it is, and there's a lot of disinformation from all sources, and they'll just kind of tell you that drinking tap water is totally fine, there's nothing wrong with it, and that couldn't be further from the truth. And then also the chemicals in our skincare and cosmetics, from shampoos to deodorants to skin products and cleaners and so on and so forth. I did an entire episode about this, episode 11, about environmental toxins, and it is insane how much we have introduced into our personal care products without really any thought about it, because it's just kind of slowly happened over time, especially since the World War II era, because of all these chemicals were found to be so, brand new, and look at all these things that they can do. And it's like, in America, the way that we look at these chemicals is they are innocent until proven guilty, which is a very broken and flawed system, because of the fact that if we don't know whether or not these chemicals are harmful, why are we using them? We should be testing them first and then deciding whether or not they have a place in our skincare and our overall household cleaner and a variety of other products that we use on a day-to-day basis. And also the fact that our food has all kinds of chemicals in it, from pesticides to solvents to dyes to artificial flavors and so on and so forth. There's just so many things that we are surrounded by in terms of chemicals that we are being exposed to that is just so harmful to our overall health. It's harmful to our endocrine system, our digestive system, and so many other things in our body that are going to be impaired and influenced by these chemicals that we are taking in. Another result that has come from these different periods of time, these different revolutions, is diet culture. So you see this in the media, and it has been parroted by our mothers and our grandmothers with absolutely no focus on real health and just thinness. And thinness does not always equal health. And this is something that has not been talked about enough because of the fact that our culture is very aesthetically based, meaning that we just really care about people's appearances rather than true health and beauty on the inside. And I'm not saying like just let yourself go and become 300 pounds, because that comes with health implications as well. But thinking that just because you are rail thin, you're going to be healthy is so wrong. It could probably not be further from the truth, because a lot of times really thin bodies can really hide these health problems like digestive issues and hormone problems. And unfortunately, the talk of period health and digestive health and energy levels and all of this stuff was not talked about with by our mothers and grandmothers. And that's why I feel like we're really starting to make the change in that sense. But this stuff is very harmful. And there kind of seems to be a misconception floating around in certain communities that promoting healthy eating and lifestyle habits and not eating processed foods is like an eating disorder, but it's really not. I think that's so stupid to say that. And, there are things like orthorexia that could technically be classified as, an unhealthy eating pattern. But for a majority, that is not the message that I'm trying to get across. It's not the message that a lot of other nutritional therapists are getting across. I hope to God they're not talking about that, because we're here to focus on real health and feeling good and healing our bodies. All of these changes have also increased the amount of time that we spend indoors, and this can really throw off our circadian rhythm because of the amount of artificial light that we're being exposed to and the fact that we are not getting enough sunlight into our eyes, on our skin, and this can really throw off our sleep schedule, causes metabolic stress, digestive problems, thyroid issues. So really getting sunshine is going to be a foundational part of helping you heal and feel better. And this is why just spending so much time indoors is not only harmful from all the chemicals that are inside, but the fact that we are ignoring our needs to be outside and to enjoy nature. And the next point that I want to bring up that I know is going to ruffle some feathers is the fact that we are slaves to the system. This starts in childhood because you go to school, you follow orders, you raise your hand when you want to ask a question or go to the bathroom or do this and that. You have to do things in such rigid routine, following a certain structure, and it just completely kills all creativity that is within children. And children have an innate ability to be creative and to come up with interesting concepts, but the structure is not conducive to creativity, and it also leads us into the corporate 9-to-5 that so many of us think that we have to do, and so many of us feel like we kind of have to. It's kind of expected out of us, and nothing about this system is natural. It is not the way we're supposed to live, and it's a system that is based off of fear, illusion, and shackles. And unfortunately, a lot of it is in our head because it is run by psychopaths, and they want us to play this game. They want us to do what they tell us to do, and it taxes our mind and our bodies, because if you are just following this system based off of fear, what is that doing to your nervous system? For example, if you don't pay your taxes on time, you have this fear of what's going to happen to me and I'm going to, fall into this trap, or credit card debt. It's very predatory, and it's like the entire system is set up this way in order to keep us living in this sense of fear. And that is where the shackles come from, because we have been programmed to feel a certain way and to be afraid of these things. And also thinking that we have to be in a corporate 9-to-5. And I see so many people breaking free from this and doing their own thing and just living life on their own terms. And it is absolutely incredible to see this. Another byproduct that has stemmed from these different revolutions throughout the past 250 years is mindless consumerism. And this is especially prevalent within online shopping because it is just so easy. You see something you like, you click the button, and boom, you just get the thing shipped to your door. And unfortunately, for a lot of people, it's just stuff that they don't need. And it's like, you need to take the time, if you're doing this, to ask yourself, what am I trying to mask? What am I trying to fill? Because there is most certainly a void within you that you feel the need to continue to buy all of this stuff. Because I can almost guarantee you that you've probably bought something in the past thinking that it was exactly what you need, it would make you happy, and it really wasn't. It was probably a feeling that you were trying to achieve from buying this stuff. Another byproduct of this system is the fact that depression and anxiety have really skyrocketed, and it's really just a byproduct of us not taking care of our minds and bodies. And this goes back to the fact of really being just trapped in this system and not being able to free our minds from this stuff. So when you are dealing with anxiety and depression, there's a lot of different reasons that it can be happening. I don't really buy into the chemical imbalance theory that has been promoted for decades, used by the psychology establishment because you look at things like gut health. And if you have an imbalance of serotonin in your gut, or you have blood sugar spikes, these things can also cause anxiety and depression. And I have an episode detailing this stuff in episode 5 where I talk about how antidepressants aren't necessarily the answer. I was personally on antidepressants for a very long time and they didn't do anything for me. They made things a lot worse until I started actually addressing the foundations of health and figuring out why I was so depressed in the first place. So if you're interested in that, definitely go check that episode out because there's a lot of really fascinating research that has been studied on depression that is not really shown to the mainstream media because it's not convenient for them. It does not go along with their narrative. And this is what is called the file drawer problem. I'm going to read a paragraph from my book about research methods in psychology that goes really deep into this and just goes to show you how bad the problem is. So it starts by saying a group of medical researchers analyzed data from a set of 72 studies in the US on the effectiveness of antidepressant medications such as Paxil and Zoloft. All of the studies had been registered in advance as required by law with the U.S. Food and Drug Administration, FDA, which oversees pharmaceutical research. Of the 74 studies, only 34 had shown positive results for these drugs, i.e., they alleviated symptoms of depression. Of the rest, 24 studies showed negative and 12 showed questionable effects of antidepressants. However, all but one of the positive studies had been published in the medical journals, whereas the studies with the null findings were much less likely to ever be published. In fact, only 3 of the 36 negative or questionable outcomes were ultimately published. Therefore, if you only read published studies, you'd conclude that 94% of them demonstrate antidepressants are effective, when in fact, only 51% of all registered studies have shown that they work. So this is a really scary thing when you're thinking about research methods and just how research is conducted and published, because of the fact that they are really only going to publish things that benefit them and show positive results in what they're trying to find. I will put the source to that in the show notes so you can read more about it if you're interested. And the last byproduct of all the changes that have happened from the start of the Industrial Revolution to now would be the lack of community and more separation and hatred for each other. So I feel like a lot of this is also because of social media and just the fact that there are so many people don't have enough space to be able to take a breather, especially in cities. And it's really unfortunate how much hatred people have for one another. Now, of course, there are exceptions to the rule, but it definitely seems like people care less about the welfare of others. There's tons of videos online. Now, of course, those are just cherry-picked videos of people doing bad things to each other and also kind of just doom scrolling. But in general, I just feel like there's a lack of empathy for one another. And it's like I've talked to elders, I've talked to my grandparents, and everyone has said that it was not like this back in the 50s or 60s, and people were just generally happier. They had more of a sense of care for one another, and I really don't feel that in today's society. I don't feel that with people nowadays. And this lack of community is really killing us. It is tearing us apart. And the fact that we're social creatures and it's like we need each other. And when you just have a blatant disregard for your fellow man, it's just sickening. For the most part, there are so many people that just don't give a shit about other people. And it's just heartbreaking because of the fact that we as a society are stronger together rather than just completely disregarding everyone else around us. So I know that that was kind of a lot of doom and gloom. It's kind of heavy stuff, and just take a minute to breathe. It is not all downhill from here. There are definitely a lot of things that we can do to improve our situation of our health and our sense of community and just spread this exuberant joy and loving kindness to ourselves and one another. So to start off, there are many things that we can do. So first off, we can start by eating real food. eating real fat, eating unprocessed food most of the time, and just making this a way of life. So not just following a trend or a fad diet like veganism, paleo, carnivore, so on and so forth. Just eating what feels right for your body and not listening to these so-called health gurus tell you exactly what to eat or to follow a specific diet, because that's not going to work for everybody. So just strive to eat like your great grandmother did and try eating foods as close to nature as possible. So cook all your meals at home and really focus on supporting local farmers, because that's what is really going to make the biggest difference in our overall health and our community. Next on the list, we have to research every pharmaceutical that you're taking. And this includes things from pills to shots to topicals and everything in between, because it is your job as a consumer to be informed. There's no reason why we shouldn't understand these things. There's no reason why we should just be reliant on what the doctor says, because you have a say-so in your health journey, and the doctor is not a boss. He is not the boss of you. And if he's acting this way, then you need to find a new doctor, because your doctor is supposed to be a partner with you. So that being said, research what you are being prescribed. So as well as asking the pharmacist, because they're going to have more information for counteractions and contradictions with certain medications and foods and supplements. Also do research on your own, and don't use a browser like Google, because they have certain people who pay to be at the top results, and they also censor certain results. Look for a browser like DuckDuckGo, because that's going to be more beneficial to receive different information that you would find on Google. Read the packet inserts from the very beginning to the very end. Read all the side effects, everything that you can find, because really it is our job to be informed on what we are doing and what these medications are going to potentially do to our body. Another thing would be to find a source of income that fulfills you, or at least change your mindset around what you're doing, or say no to extra projects at work that you physically or mentally cannot do. And there's no shame in that, because it's not a sign of weakness, it's a sign of being human. And the fact of the matter is there are really a lot of alternative paths for income in today's world, which is so amazing. It is so freeing, and really just finding what you're passionate about, even if it's just a side hustle and something that makes you feel good. So if you like drawing and you want to sell your art, after you get off of work, if you have time and you're just going to sit in front of the TV, draw instead. See if you can sell that artwork, or even just share it to the world on a social media page or your website, just for other people's enjoyment and your own. And I get that it's so much easier said than done to find a different source of income that fulfills you. But just knowing that you are not completely stuck in the situation that you're in is very freeing to you mentally, because there's a lot of different options, and it's a lot easier said than done. There's no judgment. I know that there are a lot of people who have financial responsibilities and obligations with their children and just different things that are going on in their life that would not allow them to change their job right away. But also acknowledging that there are certain things that you can do to take steps to move into a different direction, and taking accountability for that, and taking accountability for where you are at this time. And I'm not telling you to just go out and quit your job and to just wing it and to just free willy, just do whatever the heck you want, because that's going to create so many problems for you in the future, not only financially, but emotionally, mentally, physically. So just figuring out if you want to change your job, if you want to change your mindset around it, or just simply do nothing about it. And that's okay too. There's no judgment here. Filtering your water and focusing on organic pastured foods whenever possible, and just finding cleaner health and beauty products and cleaners for around the house is going to make a tremendous difference to how you feel overall, because without proper nutrition, no matter what we do, no matter what mindset work we do, what kind of lifestyle changes we make, it's not going to make a difference if we are not properly nourishing our body. So these are kind of two sides of the same coin, because you can't have a healthy body without a healthy mind and vice versa. So it's like you kind of have to do all of the things in terms of like nutrition and lifestyle and mindset work, because if you're really missing one, like your body's gonna be behind and it's not gonna be able to catch up in that sense. So really just focusing on finding better food sources and just choosing healthier products, and also just realizing that we're not made of money. And a lot of people right now are having really bad financial problems, and just acknowledging that this is kind of just how things are right now. And if you can't afford to buy organic or that cleaner that you wanted or that nice shampoo that you wanted, just don't stress about it and just do what you can, because at the end of the day, that's what matters. Something free and simple that you can do that costs no money, but it makes a big difference, is to turn off your Wi-Fi at night and to be away from electronics. So this includes reducing screen time before bed, reducing screen time when you get up, and just opting for natural sunlight in the morning, watching the sunrise at night, maybe even looking at the stars if you can, and keeping your phone away from your bed when you are sleeping. And I know a lot of people use their phones for their alarm, but you can turn it on airplane mode and leave it all the way across the room, or you can invest in a sunrise alarm clock that mimics the sun up. And when you're turning your Wi-Fi off at night, this gives you an extra bonus of not having that EMF and just reducing that load when you are sleeping, because sleep really is for restoring your body. And then a really important one that so many people overlook and think that it's just something that they can go without doing. And this is working on breaking the trauma that was instilled in you throughout generations. So you can break free from old patterns and cycles, learning how to overcome trauma. And I'm not sure if that's even the right word, overcome, because, when you've gone through something traumatic, you can't really just overcome that and be like, oh, well, nothing happened, like it is what it is. But more in a sense of just coming to a sense of acceptance and realizing that what happened to you is not who you are. It might have had an impact on certain parts of you, but you are not your trauma and you are not your story, and you are so much more than that. And it's okay to have these hurts, but it's not okay to hold on to them so tightly to the point where it makes us sick. So if you need to, definitely go see a therapist, go work with spiritual healers to help you move through the trauma and to help it move through your body and your mind, and to just live a life that's more fulfilling and aligned with where you want to be and who you are. And then speaking of traumas, if you are like me and you heard the previous generations talking all about diet culture, just focus on real health and not thinness. So being thin is okay. However, there's so much more to your health than just being thin, like your digestion, your sleep, your skin health, your moods, joy, happiness, so on and so forth. And healthy eating it's a lifestyle, and it doesn't have to be defined by orthorexia or restrictive eating or even an unhealthy mindset that comes with orthorexia. And again, I'm not saying just jump on the whole fat acceptance movement of, dieting won't help and all this stuff, because, that comes with pitfalls and harm as well. But also acknowledging that nutrient-dense whole foods are the most nourishing physical things that we can do for our body, and just embracing that and really rejecting diet culture and embracing real whole foods. And the point that I touched on earlier about living in a system that really enslaves our minds, souls, and bodies, this is really a personal journey that a lot of people have to come to the realization on their own. I know that this is something that a lot of people will understand when they've come to a point in their life when they have come to a breaking point, or they've had a near-death experience, which is kind of what triggered my awakening to everything, is when I had a near-death experience. But just not allowing yourself to be so enslaved by the system and breaking free from these thought patterns that have been instilled in us from a very young age. And in the words of Morpheus from The Matrix, you have to let it all go. Fear, doubt, and disbelief. Free your mind. And I think that fits so beautifully because that's really all that it is. You just have to let it go. And instead of focusing on mindless consumerism, you can focus on mindful consumerism. So all those junk apps like Temu or Wish or I don't know, whatever those ridiculous ads are for these really cheap goods. I know Shein, Shein, that's another one that uses slave labor. Wayfair, just really cheap stuff, even stuff off Amazon. Like it's just a bunch of crap that we don't need and we feel the need to buy this stuff. So instead of doing that, just focus on mindful consuming. So understand where that desire to buy all that stuff comes from and what you're trying to fill in your life and why you're even buying the stuff that you don't need. So focusing on things that you do need in your life, things that are going to be an asset to your lifestyle and diet, things that are going to bring you joy, and just really have a deep understanding before you click the buy button on the shopping cart online. Just really ask yourself those questions and ask yourself, can I live without this? Do I really need it? So just being mindful of what you're buying and just try to buy higher quality things that are going to last as well. And that mindless consumerism can also be a byproduct or result of depression and anxiety. So really trying to understand why this depression is happening in the first place. A lot of times it's not just because you need a pill or because there's some kind of chemical imbalance. It's typically a lot deeper than that. And it can be because of poor digestion. Maybe there's some nutrient deficiencies that you're dealing with, even a poor environment. And that goes beyond just maybe mold in the house or bad quality air outside. That could even be a neglectful parent or a abusive spouse or something like that, or even like a housemate that is really causing you a lot of stress and just so many other factors that can cause anxiety and depression. And just pinpointing that and just writing things down that you think it could be caused by, and taking the steps towards moving past all of that. So a couple practices that you could do that are really helpful for understanding depression and for kind of retraining the brain to move into a different space would be things like mindfulness or meditation. Gratitude is also something that is really helpful. So you could just wake up every day, write the top 5 things that you are grateful for. You can write them once, you can write each thing 3 times. It really just depends. And even prayer. And I know that prayer has been so demonized in today's society, the way that Christians get looked down upon, but you don't have to be a Christian to pray. You can just pray to a higher being, and you might be surprised with how much fulfillment you actually find in prayer. And lastly, we have finding community. So we really cannot go through this life alone. The people who go through life alone usually have a tremendous amount of mental and physical health problems because we are social by nature. So you can find people who share the same hobbies as you, or maybe even your kids' friends' parents, or even Facebook groups or apps like Meetup. These can all be really helpful tools for helping you find a community or even build one yourself, to be able to find people who are like you and to bring you fulfillment and joy in your life. Because if you don't have that, and if you feel like you're doing this all alone, it's very isolating. And isolation is a very dangerous thing. It's a very slippery slope. So really just getting creative and putting yourself out there is going to be a huge, huge win to be able to find a community of people who help you feel fulfillment in this life. So to wrap this all up, we talked about the changes that have happened over the last 250 years since the Industrial Revolution. And we talked about the result of these changes, what it's doing to our bodies, and what we can do to make positive changes. And I highly encourage you to take these steps to make these positive changes, because you will be surprised at how good you feel if you start implementing some of these things, because our life and our lifestyles and the way that the system is designed, is not designed for healthy living. It is not designed with our health in mind. It is designed for money. And unfortunately, this is the reality of the system that we're living in. And really just breaking free from this and living the life that you want to the best of your ability and just focusing on your happiness and the happiness of others around you is what's really going to make huge changes. And that's all that I have for you today. So I really hope you enjoyed, and I am really looking forward to the next episode. So just remember to take it step by step and to keep learning on your wonderful journey of wellness. And that's all the time that we have for this episode. Ran a little bit longer than some of the previous ones, but there was a lot of information that had to get thrown in. So thank you so much for tuning into this week's episode. Today we talked all about the changes that have happened over the past 250 years, the result of these changes, and what it's doing to our bodies, along with what we can do to make positive changes. You can expect new episodes every Wednesday at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Just a quick reminder again of how you can support the podcast and stay in the loop. Just make sure that you sign up for my email list. That way you can be notified every time I post a new podcast episode, make any announcements about my services and how you can work with me, and also receive weekly relevant tips for digestion and hormones so you can optimize your health. My email list is the first to be notified about all of these things. You can find the link to sign up for my emails in the show notes or head to my website at megangarzawellness.com and you can wait for the pop-up or sign up under the freebies tab. Again, I just want to thank you for taking the time to listen to this week's topic. Take care, everyone, and until next time.